Hi, I'm photographer David Flores, and welcome to the BHPhoto live stream discussion on the new Panasonic S1 and S1R camera systems. It's a phenomenal time to go full frame, a phenomenal time for photography. We have an incredible panel of guests that are going to be talking about the S1 and S1R today. You may notice in the background here, we have Mia doing a little bit of makeup because we have a photo shoot that we're going to be jumping into today right here on set. But before we get that going, I want to introduce our fabulous guest and panelists. Maybe we can just go around and have everyone introduce themselves. William, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm William Innes. I'm a wedding and travel photographer from Los Angeles. I'm also a global ambassador with Lumix. I was super lucky to get my hands on a camera last December, take it down to Cartagena, Colombia, and shoot some wedding models and get to experience the new body and lenses.
Well, we got some nice sunshine today in New York City. Thank you so much for bringing the LA with you there.
I tried.
Emily?
Hi, my name is Emily Bursky. I am a blogger and a photographer based here in New York City. I shoot mainly fashion and travel content, so I was really excited to try out the new Lumix camera on a couple of fashion shoots these past couple weeks. We had a really good time going out and getting some nice photos. The quality is absolutely incredible, and I can't wait to talk about it.
Where have you been recently?
So recently I was in Paris. I did Paris Fashion Week, and next week I'm actually leaving for the Bahamas, Peru, and Florida. So I'm excited for some warmth, which will be nice.
Well, if you need some photo assistance, there's a couple of photographers
Yeah, let me know. Hit me up.
that are here. Another big traveler, we have Sean. Sean, you're our Panasonic guy today.
Yes, I am. As pretty much as I have been in the past, too.
Absolutely.
I'm Sean Robinson. I'm one of the product managers for Lumix USA. Been working with our talent team, our photographers, ambassadors, William, really excited to hear what you guys thought about the camera and the time you guys have been shooting with it.
Well, I know a guy that speaks his mind. He's over here on the end. Dave.
Yeah, thank you. Dave Geffen. I'm a New York-based cinematographer and photographer, focusing mainly on fashion, do some commercial and corporate video work as well, and also do fashion and portraiture on the still side. What I did was I took it out onto the streets to really put it through its paces with some street photography. I shot some video and we did some stills, and very impressed. A few little things that I could see like potentially wanting to improve, but overall, very impressed with this thing.
It's awesome. Well, we're going to get all into that here today during our panel discussion. Let's get this out of the way. We are live, which means if you have questions about the Panasonic S1, S1R, photography, or moving images, please tweet at us. Use the hashtag BHPhotoLive, and our panel will gladly accept questions. We'll be answering questions while we're on air. If we don't answer your question on air, our social media team will jump in, get back to you that way. Also, simply by using the hashtag BHPhotoLive, you'll automatically be entered into a drawing for a $500 B&H gift card. So you want to make sure to use that hashtag BHPhotoLive. All right, now over the other way here, we've got Frank on set with Crystal. I think they're gearing up, getting ready for the photo shoot. And I think Mia is going to head over there in just a minute. How you doing? Yeah. Hey, Crystal, what's going on? Y'all getting excited to shoot? Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, Frank, what are you holding over there, man? What is that?
I'm holding a Nangguang wand.
So you're going to be using...
Pretty good. Yeah, just to give it a little touch of color.
This is so cool. This is so cool. So we've got a photo shoot going on over there. We've got our panel discussion going on over here, and we'll be checking in with Frank and seeing how he's doing. All right, now, this is Panasonic's first push into full-frame 35mm digital. For somebody that's coming from a smaller format camera, like Micro Four Thirds, what's the advantage here, William, or does it make you stop using the old stuff and into the new stuff? How does this work for you?
I originally switched to the smaller Micro Four Thirds stuff for size and weight, because I usually shoot with 2 camera bodies at a wedding. But ultimately, I had to give up a few things. And the things I gave up, I can get back with this camera now, and that is definitely low light. And when you're photographing weddings, you're always in a dark church or a dark reception hall, and you usually have to use supplemental lighting to light it up. Now, I can shoot this camera easily at 6400, higher ISO, no light, and capture great images. So that's one of the things. And the other thing is depth of field with the bokeh you get with the new 50mm lens. It's absolutely amazing. So they're 2 different tools, and I'm going to use them at 2 different points in a wedding day.
Awesome. Now, Emily, this is your first time out using any mirrorless camera. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
How'd that feel for you? Because you're a full-frame 35mm shooter, and now this is your first full frame
Yeah, so I
35
generally shoot on a larger full frame camera. And I've been wanting to try a mirrorless, partially for the issue of weight. So I'm constantly carrying around a ton of heavy gear, and I've been really curious to try and see what the difference would be for a mirrorless and just how it handles and how it feels like holding a supposedly lighter camera. The thing with this one is it kind of evens out. So you wind up with a slightly heavier mirrorless camera, but you get more for what you're losing in weight, if that makes sense. So you're getting incredibly high quality images, very crisp. I mean, to the point of I'm shooting photos of people and zooming in on their pores and seeing every little detail to the point that you might not necessarily need that much, but it was absolutely gorgeous. Like you'll see some of the images on the screen here of some fashion shoots that I did. And this is another perfect example of color. So I shoot a lot with really bright colors, and I found that you got a really incredible range on the Lumix camera, which was beautiful. So I was able to get really crisp blues, really stunning pinks, really gorgeous light throughout all of my images, so yeah.
So when you're shooting for social, like you're really trying to maximize what you can show in terms of a product or an experience. With that much resolution, do you find yourself cropping into the image to get multiple things to share out, or is that part of your workflow?
I don't necessarily, because I usually try to shoot for what I'm going to wind up posting. But in theory, I could if I needed to. So it is nice to have that ability that, like, if I needed to zoom in on a specific logo or a specific piece of a product that I might be shooting, it's incredible to have that ability to do so.
That's awesome. Now, Dave, your personal work on the street is with 35 millimeter film. Real deal
Yeah, the
celluloid.
last 5 years I've been out on the street shooting film. Street photography has been a love of mine for probably almost 10 years, if not longer. And the last 5 years of which have all been with a film camera. So this was particularly interesting to me because I haven't ventured out with a digital camera on the streets for years. I can't even remember really the last time I shot with one, to be honest with you.
But you were able to adapt the glass that you like to shoot film with.
Right, so obviously there's a couple of lenses here, the 50, the 24 to 105, which was great. But with the Leica adapter, I put a 35 millimeter f2, a Summicron on there, which is the lens I've been shooting with predominantly, like 95% of all of my work, if not more over the last 5 years, is with that same exact lens. It's just an earlier version. So it was a really interesting marriage between a bigger camera than what I'm used to, a digital camera, and at the same time, the old school feel of the rangefinder lens, and the fact that I was shooting video with this thing, because obviously, you know, the Leica film camera I carry around with me everywhere is a stills camera. It's a 35 millimeter stills camera. So I'm shooting stills and I'm shooting video with this thing with a lens that I used at first before gravitating into the 50 and the 24 to 105 that felt identical to the experience I get on the street with my Leica.
Now, Sean, this is a big jump here. Traditionally, Panasonic's been in this micro four thirds market. What were the factors for the company in thinking, hey, let's go bigger?
So basically with everyone that's involved in the development of our products, you know, we've spent a lot of time, 10 years in fact, you know, since we introduced this mirrorless concept to the industry. We've spent that time learning and listening to what our users want, where we can find areas to improve on what's out in the market already. And ultimately, after the GH4 came out and then the GH5, 5S, and G9, there was a lot of feedback, you know, about, you know, we love the feature set that you have, and the system is great. It's a well-fled, you know, built-out system already, but you know, we want better low light. We want that bokeh capability, you know, that you were talking about before, William. And through all that feedback, it basically kind of is the natural progression here. Is, you know, like I said, it's been 10 years. So what better way to hallmark that accomplishment by introducing, you know, the next next big thing in photography, with the L mount, with our alliance that was built between the three manufacturers, and take what we learned and expound on it to produce a better product.
We should talk about that L mount because it's not just Panasonic that's building out lenses here. We also have Leica as a partner and Sigma as a partner to build out some of the glass. Now, there's 3 lenses available at launch. I'm a 50 millimeter super fan. So, William, I'm curious, like, what you've gotten to do with the 50.
Well, like I said, we took it down to Cartagena, and the first thing that amazed me was how big it was. But it feels.
It's a bit hefty.
It is, but it's the feel. And even this camera, the body is the same thing. We were talking about that before we went on set. Picking up this camera, it feels like a camera should feel. So same with the lens. And then shooting it was amazing. I'm not a big fan of portraiture with a 50, but there were some shots that we did do down in Colombia where we took portraits, and they were absolutely amazing. Ears would be out of focus, but eyes would be tack sharp.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know.
Dave, did you play with
There's
the
the
50?
image.
Yeah, I took the 50 out onto the streets, and like William said, I mean, it's a big lens, it's a big, heavy thing. And especially when you're used to shooting with something, as I am, which is so small and compact, which is like, a Leica 35 f2. It's a small, tiny, non-intrusive thing, which is exactly what you want on the street. So I put the 50 on, and it was like, wow, this is pretty hefty, to say the least. Not the most indiscreet thing, but the image quality is great. I think the fact that there's this alliance, this partnership with Sigma and Leica, which is kind of like almost unheard of. I don't know. The fact that we don't lose functionality by putting on another manufacturer's piece of glass onto a body is really interesting, especially from a video perspective. I don't want to have to use an adapter that means I lose autofocus or means I have to kind of adapt my production workflow, if you like, to whatever third-party lens I'm adding on. The fact that it all kind of speaks to one another and that you've got these different price points. Okay, the 35 f2 I had is almost a $4,000 lens, right? I'm not going to run out and buy that. My one from the 70s cost me like $1,500, okay? The fact that you have this range of options of functionality and price points means that for the end user, they've got a great selection. And they don't have to compromise. That's the thing which is really interesting about the partnership.
Now, Emily, one of the things that I know is so important for you is flexibility when you're traveling. So you shot most of your work with a zoom lens, the 24 to 90
Yeah, so I was
lens?
using the 24 to 70 Leica lens, which was absolutely stunning. I like to have a lot of versatility, so I'm going out on the street and I wind up shooting. So in addition to photography, I'm doing blogging. So I'm shooting product campaigns 1 second, and then the next second I'm shooting an image of like a portrait of me on the street wearing a certain outfit or what have you. Especially when traveling too, I then have to go take like a gorgeous landscape of whatever situation I'm in, or for example, this lovely street photo that I took here.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
That's flashing up on the screen.
Wow.
So I like to be able to go out with the minimal amount of equipment, but the maximum amount of versatility with what I'm shooting, because I never really know what I'm gonna get, and it's nice to just be in the moment and say like, oh wow, I can frame this stunning shot of a purse that I'm holding, and you have the background's all blurred, the bokeh is wonderful, and then all of a sudden I turn around and I'm like, wow, that's a gorgeous landscape, and I can still shoot the same thing without having to clunkily switch through lenses, carry 12 things with me in a giant backpack. I'm a small person. I don't have a whole lot of, I can't carry a whole lot with me. So I'm just trying to get as much out of what I'm carrying as possible, which I definitely found with this camera, and especially with the Leica lens. I was sad to give it back.
We should definitely talk about the size, because for years and years since mirrorless came to market, it's been about the concentration of features and technologies into the smallest, easiest thing to carry. But this kind of goes the other way. Like the S1 and the S1R, these are big cameras. So what was the thinking here, Sean, like going big?
Well, so this again goes back to, I think that, mirrorless as a concept has evolved. It's been, like we said, it's been 10 years. And knowing that, at least from our offering, the G series, and then, obviously onto the S series, we've basically set up that, if you want a small, compact, interchangeable lens camera, we make it. We make everything from, the compact GF series all the way up to the GH. So that platform, that base has been established. That affords us the ability to say like, okay, look, in order for mirrorless to really work for a professional photographer, what are the things you need? Is going down to the smallest size that you can make just to have it, say that it's the smallest camera, is that really a benefit in the professional world? Or is having a camera that's designed properly, that takes the feedback and the input from photographers that are using these things on a day-to-day basis, is it taking that feedback and saying, well, if the camera has to be bigger, but ergonomically it's designed right, the buttons get put in the right place, the feature set that you need on a job is there, this really lets us turn around and say, okay, well, there's not really anything that says the camera needs to be small. It should be designed right. It shouldn't be designed with a compromise. And that's why when we launched this product, the whole concept of full frame without compromise, you know, kind of came to light, is that there shouldn't be compromises in professional gear. And that's what our target with this was professional equipment to really bring mirrorless products into that light for working pros.
One of the professional things I think that I'm always considering, especially with mirrorless, is overheating issues. And I think this size, did anybody get the camera to overheat? I want to get this out of the way.
No, I was running 4K 60 frames a second video constantly for the video which I shot through the course of a day. And
I think it slowed slightly for me at certain points, but I was also shooting raw JPEG and like at all times. So
yeah,
but never.
I mean, normally high resolution and high frame rates is what will put you into overheating territory. Yes. And I was using an SD card. XQD, no, all SD. Okay, so technically slower media, not quite as like high-end performance. An XQD card, totally fine, totally fine.
That's another thing that I think we should bring up. You do have the two card slots, so you can work with XQD, you can work with SD, which is good for backup. Or if you're truly a hybrid shooter, having the speed of that XQD card for your video, I'm sure is...
Yeah, and as we know, a lot of people, consumers, have complained about certain manufacturers only having one card slot, right? Whatever you feel on that, there's always a compromise. It is a bigger camera than what we're used to, but I think there's a bit of a misnomer, especially if you haven't held this. You can see the video I shot. Everything was shot handheld, walking around. To me, this is a small camera. Okay, I'm used to shooting on cinema cameras and much larger, much heavier like gear, all the way down to small mirrorless cameras like this. And to me, yes, it represents a slightly larger size in the mirrorless world. But I think if people are kind of going to say, well, it's too big, they have to hold it to feel it and to get a sense of it, because it really isn't a big, heavy thing. You know?
Yeah, relatively, I found that there's something almost dainty about it. I don't know if that's the right word, but like comparatively to some other things that I'll be shooting with that have the same functionality and the same capability, it does come across a lot smaller than things that would be shooting a comparable image, which was nice. So for the quality that you're getting, and like you were saying, there's no compromises on it, for the incredible quality that you're getting, if you tried to get that on some other system, you would be just as heavy, if not much heavier. So I found it actually impressive for the size of what it was.
William, in the wedding space or in any kind of documentary or reportage situation, so many professional photographers now rely on an autofocus system. And I wonder if you can speak to how it worked for you when you had the
It worked flawless. It's the same system that sort of, or at least the same idea that came over from the G series. And as a wedding guy, I love the eye detection, and now they have animal detection, which I probably will not be using in the wedding world. I know. But it has eye detection, and it's amazing how it locks on a face and then actually puts a crosshair right on the eye, and it works every single time. It's absolutely amazing when you're doing portraiture or you have a bride. If it can't see an eye, it actually puts a box and recognizes a body. So the autofocus system is quick, fast. I don't even have to think about it when I'm working. That's what I love about it.
And for the street, now Dave, I'm not sure if you use autofocus when you're on the street at all, but you mentioned using the 50, so I'm assuming you got to play with it a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes I do. It really depends if I'm trying to track a moving subject. So the Leica lens and the adapter aside, which is obviously all manual,
right.
Most of what I shot was with the 24 to 105. Some of it was with the 50. A lot of it is with manual focus, because I inherently still don't trust fully what a camera is going to give me when you set it to autofocus. But just doing some very simple tests with autofocus and the tracking, it really does do a good job. The one time it had a problem, which I wouldn't put down to this camera necessarily, because they all tend to, is a heavily backlit subject. I was trying to autofocus on someone who's heavily backlit, following them walking, right? So pretty tough conditions for any camera. And it was having trouble discerning and finding the subject. That aside, I thought the actual autofocus capabilities were great, although I did, like I say, predominantly shoot this with manual focus in mind.
Sean, the system, if I'm correct here, is not on the phase detection system. It's mostly contrast detection and autofocus. So it's incredibly accurate, but it may move in and out.
Yeah, so the big improvements that we put in this, because yes, with contrast systems, you get what some people refer to as wobble. So you get like that where it's kind of like pulsing. basically, in the S1 and the S1R, the system is now refreshing at 480 hertz with the newer lenses and the newer DFD algorithms and profiles that we have with all of our optics. So that basically means that compared to what users may have seen on GH or G9 cameras like that, this system is working at a much faster clip. And then you add on top of it, like we were saying with the face, body, human eye detection and animal detection now, our deep learning AI or the machine learning system that's been added into it just further enhances that capability. So it's a much faster system to help minimize that pulsing that you see, but also rival what others assume is a better focusing system. But really the proof is in using these systems to see it for yourself.
I have to say, one thing that I appreciated about the autofocus and the camera at large was I do a lot of, with the crossover between blogging and photography, I do a lot of I'll set up a shot, I'll get it ready to go, I'll get all the lighting and everything set, and then I'll have a friend of mine actually snap the shutter. And being able to hand it off to someone who doesn't know anything about photography, who really isn't used to holding one of these larger format cameras, they could still figure it out very quickly. It was still focused, it was still a crisp image, which I do sometimes have issues with other camera bodies, that it's kind of hard for someone who doesn't really know what they're doing to step into that role and figure out how to focus and figure out what they're doing. So it was nice to be able to have that and just hand it off to a friend, and they're like, oh, cool, I just put this little dot here, and yeah. So it was very quick and easy.
The body is incredible. It's a brand new camera, but the logic of the control layout is awesome. And the buttons are large, which I think that makes a big difference for me.
Yes, I like large buttons.
Well,
It's just easier to find and use, and you don't have to hunt and see. You
And
just,
they're all pretty much, when you're holding it, exactly where you need it to be. You don't really need to do a whole lot of scrolling.
There was a lot of attention paid during the early development periods. I know, William, you were, I think, part of the earlier, kind of, if we did this, how would it feel kind of thing? What would you think about it? And I mean, our engineers and design team that put the effort into this, went through countless body designs to refine it. We've shown it at a number of the bigger shows where, just the sheer number of grips that we went through and the material that they chose for it. So it's kind of reassuring to hear people, have that kind of comment back that, they succeeded, we think, in what they went to achieve.
Yeah, and I will say on the S1, I don't know about the S1R because I didn't shoot with it. The fact that you've got a button light that lights up your buttons at night for dark scenarios like at a wedding or wherever you happen to be, that is fantastic, And on a camera at this sort of price point, you don't normally expect to see necessarily that type of functionality, and it is totally invaluable. It doesn't matter whether you're just on the street at night or, shooting a wedding in a dark venue space. The fact that you can hit that, because the buttons are intuitively placed, right? But I still think years and years after shooting with Canon and other, cameras, the fact that we don't have always an illumination button for the other buttons, when you're rushing and under pressure, you're like, damn, why don't we have these? This should be part of the functionality. So we have that,
You're
which
just
I use.
expected to know it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how long it's taken to do this,
Right? No, I really appreciated that, especially for the stuff at
That's
night.
the great thing I like about
I will say, devil's
Lumix.
advocate, sometimes I would hand it to a friend and they would unknowingly and unwittingly change a lot of the settings. They'd just be like, oh, okay, cool. Oh, crap, the entire thing's different. The entire thing's different. So someone handed it back to me at one point, and it was weirdly saturated. And I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on with this. She had accidentally hit the art features on the touchscreen. It was a really simple mistake. She'd just been holding the camera for a second and just happened to flip it, which is nice to know that it's that easy to change. But also on the flip side, I was like, okay, maybe I need to lock the settings in when I'm handing it to people.
I was just going to talk, there's an awesome feature in these cameras that you can actually save your settings to an SD card.
Oh, yeah,
and I keep that SD card with a special marketed in my pocket pixel while I'm shooting. And sometimes as an assistant or I'm wearing, the camera will bump and the settings will change. It's easy to put that SD card in, hit it, and restore your settings, and you're good to go again.
There's also a lock feature on the camera as well, isn't it?
That's actually what I was going to say, is that, that kind of situation was something that was brought up very early in the body design, was that, if you're going to hand the camera off to somebody, there's a physical lock switch now where you can go in and say,
To be fair,
I don't want it.
I just all I had to do was lock it. I just didn't think to do that. I was like, okay, here, you're fine. And
No, but it's cool that these kinds of things that, sitting at a table where, you're hearing these ideas without actually seeing the camera, and then hearing that, like, that's something that legitimately happens.
Yeah.
When you do work out there, seeing the fix that the team worked on actually be something that's useful in the real world is just really cool, in my opinion.
Well, just remember to lock your camera, kids.
Yes.
All right.
Friends make sure friends' cameras are locked.
Yeah. I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the moving image. I think so much of the work that's being produced now requires a photographer to make both still images and moving images. And I wonder if I could maybe start with you, Dave.
Sure.
Thinking about how this camera might fit into your workflow and the moving image.
So the thing that really stood out for me amongst everything was the in-body image stabilization. And then when you couple that with a lens that has like the optical stabilization or whatever, you're looking at something where you can handhold something and it looks like it's on a tripod. That's the only way I can describe it. I was sort of gobsmacked. I was actually, rather than shooting anything, I was looking, thinking, how is this so stable? And I was trying to freak it out and move it around so that it would kind of, sometimes with the electronic stabilization, you get weird spasming or kind of, it's trying to detect exactly what you want to hold steady. That happened a couple of times, but it was generally when I was trying to freak it out and throw all of the image stabilization features on at the same time to see what it's capable of. But to be able to walk around and to be able to shoot video like completely handheld that looks like it could have been shot on a gimbal is really fantastic. That's not to say that you couldn't put it on a gimbal, and I have a gimbal and I would have loved to have put it on a gimbal, but for me that stabilization was really, really impressive. Yeah.
And for you, William, are you shooting video weddings with?
Very little. I'm pretty, I know Sean's over there laughing. I'm pretty well a still shooter. Yeah, the little red button, right, just for video, but no.
Yeah, I didn't really shoot in a video either. I did pretty much entirely stills. One good thing is it's very quick, so I could easily see doing some stop motion. It'd be very easy to do. You can half compress the shutter and all of a sudden you have 20 images. It's very quick.
Right, yes.
Well, we have 4K here, right, Sean? All right.
Yes, we do.
Run us down, because folks are going to want to know.
Yeah.
Is this real 4K?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So, the S-series cameras are the first of the full-frame mirrorless cameras that support 4K 60p recording. So the S1R, and we'll start with that one, which is the more photography-oriented camera, is a little bit more laid back on the video side of the features. So, you still get 4K 60p, 4K 30, 24p, and this is UHD 4K, not DCI 4K, so not cinema 4K. So for like the photojournalist where, you need a little bit of video, that's, the S1R is great for that. But the S1 is really where our video heritage, I think, shines out. So you have 4K 60p, 4K 30p, 24p, kind of the bog standard that you have. Well, as we set the standard now at 60p, but on top of that, it's unlimited time recording up to 30p. So there's no issue with long form recording in a full frame camera now, which is something that doesn't exist up until now. You'll have 422 10-bit color, which is going to be coming in the update really soon. Out of the box, you get more forward-thinking formats. You have H.265 for hybrid log gamma recording out of the box. You have 422 10-bit hybrid log gamma support over HDMI. There's so many cool things that are coming with it, and then like we also did announce that it's going to have full vlog. Is it 422 10-bit 60p out over HDMI, and those will be things that come very soon in an update similar to like how we did with the GH5. But for video users, think of this as a very solid option. Not necessarily a GH5 replacement when it comes to that, because that still has things like waveform and MOV recording and all intra. But this will be that really cool solid system for you where you want better quality video than what's currently available in the industry. But,
Yeah. I mean, as a professional, if I was using this camera, I would pay for the upgrade. I would have to, because I need my 10-bit and I want 422. Like 420 8-bit is just not going to cut it for what I'm producing. However, saying that, and I don't know what the cost of the update will be, I think that's probably on everyone's mind and when it's coming. I don't know if you can talk about that, but as long as you expose for the highlights, if you clip at 420 8-bit in post, like you haven't got recovery, right? It's done. As long as you expose for the highlights and you have a nice balanced scene, there's nothing wrong with that at the moment at all. You know, the video which I shot was all internal 420 8-bit, 4K 60 frames a second. And those things aside, the kind of image quality, the kind of, like I was talking about the in-body stabilization, that kind of outweighed everything. You just have to be careful if you're shooting 8-bit 420 that you're exposing properly for your highlights.
I just quickly wanted to interject. I probably did shoot video because the camera does have a 6K photo mode.
Oh, that's right.
Which we shot, and it's amazing. We had a couple walking. Yeah, you have to use a high shutter speed, not typically what you would use in video, 60 frames per second, and then actually in the back of the camera you can scan through, see what you like, and save it as an 18 megapixel JPEG right in the camera. Or you can extract it later in post. But it's amazing because I always do this shot where I have the couple walking and looking at each other, and you just scan through for that magic moment when the two eyes make contact, and man, you've nailed the shot. Can't miss.
Well, there's a lot of great video features that are on the S1 and S1R, but I think that the standout for me is that Panasonic's really taking stills photography very seriously with these cameras. So I want to throw it over to see how Frank's doing in the studio space. How you doing over there, Frank?
Doing pretty good. So we shot for a few minutes, and now we're just going over some selects and seeing initially the first few things that we got that we might like. I've used the camera before. It's really great. In the studio setting especially, I've come to like it.
These are really
So
beautiful.
are you ready to shoot some more?
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, let's see how it goes over there. Very cool.
Let's see.
So Frank is going to shoot tethered here over in the space. We'll actually be able to see those images pop up and talk about what we see as we see them here.
Yeah. I also think it's really cool too, because like that whole concept, taking photography seriously as a brand. We went even down into the level of tethered shooting, which I believe he's doing over there now.
That's right. That's right.
So there's the software that we created with it that allows you to do that tethered capture, get that proof right up. Have it set up as a hot folder for Lightroom or whatever, which I believe he's using over there. So it's really cool to see how serious our Panasonic has become and Lumix as a brand and what we're trying to do to support pros on this side of the industry now too.
I think one of the interesting things, this is kind of back to the design of the body, was the LCD screen flips in a interesting way, almost like a hinge. And I remember having a conversation at the office with somebody, they didn't like that very much. I was like, well, in the studio, if I have this thing on a set of sticks and I'm shooting products that I'm moving in and out, this makes things very, very simple without like having a big to-do around you. You can move pretty quickly and see what you're doing. So I think that's a really nice design choice.
Yeah, the rear screen is one of those things that I don't think anyone would ever be able to please everybody.
No, this is very true.
Yeah.
Vari-angle screens are great, and our GH has been awesome with those. But for the studio environment for photographers, we found that this was a much better solution for the photography market that happened to have still some good benefits for videographers and cinematographers, but is just truthfully a more durable, reliable style of a screen than the flip-out articulating one. So for the vloggers, sorry, but.
Hey Frank, what's it like moving between the viewfinder and the LCD screen over there?
Oh, I gotcha. What was that?
What's it like moving between the viewfinder and the LCD screen? Does it move pretty quickly?
It's very fluid, very fluid. Give me 1 second. Yeah, it's not up.
Frank's doing some culling here.
Sean,
Let's see.
Yes, sir.
could you help me get it back on the screen here, the
sure.
photos as they come up?
This is the fun part of
Yeah.
of live photo
why it's
shoots. This is
live.
awesome.
Now that Sean's gone,
Right,
on
we can
the
really
topic
talk
of the
here.
LCD, shall
Yes.
I talk about something I didn't like?
Yes, let's
Yeah?
talk about this. Sean's not here.
Yeah, Sean's gone, now we can talk bad about everything. Just to caveat this, it's not something that I didn't like, it's a niggle. It's like it's a small thing. However, if you're doing low shots and you're using the LCD and you're shooting, I guess, stills or video, if you flip that screen out, you do have a bit of obscuring with the rubberized eye cup, that's on the viewfinder. For really low angle shots, when I had the camera down on the ground and I was like looking down and over the top, that does intrude a little into the LCD. It's a small thing.
I'm back.
And it's not a terrible thing, but it's a thing. It's a thing. And if you want to really make use of a flip-out screen like that, for me, I'm not vlogging, but I am getting low, high shots, etc., etc. You want to make sure that you can see. That's the only thing, the small gripe about the LCD. Other than that, it's a really beautiful LCD, and I don't shoot looking at the back of my screen holding a camera up. And I did that a lot with this camera, right?
It becomes a habit.
Yeah.
It changes, because you always think viewfinder. And then more and more, you're just looking, as long as you can see the back of the screen and shoot. It's amazing.
Well, we were also talking earlier about the fact that you can see through the viewfinder exactly what you're going to be shooting.
Yes.
Which is like an incredible feature, because the second you change any of the features, you usually have just a viewfinder that you're seeing the scene, but you can't see what you're going to shoot. And with this new viewfinder feature, I can't remember the technical term, but with the viewfinder feature, you're able to see exactly when you change the settings, like
Custom preview.
it's brightening on the preview through the viewfinder, which is amazing.
Now, you're used to using an optical viewfinder with the SLR. Was it a hard transition for you moving right into mirrorless, having this EVF?
I wouldn't say it was a hard transition. It was just a bit of an adjustment, as with anything. I think a lot of what I found with this camera was just getting used to it. And once I got used to it, I was like, oh, cool. All right, that's not that bad. That's easy to use. And with the viewfinder especially, it also helped me to notice certain things very quickly that I might not have otherwise been able to fix. Like, I would have had to wait, shoot, see it on the screen, fix, et cetera, et cetera. Perfect, going back to the example that I used with the oversaturated art feature that I somehow wound up on. The second I looked at the viewfinder, I could tell. I was like, that's way too bright. That's really strange. And you were telling us earlier that you can also see, like, when you put it on a black and white image, you can see that through the viewfinder as well. So you know exactly what you're getting as you're shooting, which is nice. Like, you intuitively should probably know, but it's nice to be able to just have that, and you can make any adjustments you need without having to constantly go back and forth like that. It's just a very seamless experience. So, yeah.
Well, I just want to remind the folks that are watching this stream, please ask us questions. Use the hashtag BHPhotoLive. We'll be taking some questions for the panel shortly here. Also, when you use that hashtag, you're automatically entered into a drawing for a $500 B&H gift card, which is pretty sweet.
Who doesn't want $500?
Let's take the $500. It sounds really, really great. All right. Frank, how's it going over there?
Very well, very well. And one of the things that I like most about this compared to other mirrorless cameras is how responsive the shutter is. The shutter action is very, very good and DSLR-like. So it's one less thing that I have to worry about, that it's not going to respond to inputs when I press the shutter.
And how you finding the autofocus, Frank?
The autofocus it's very responsive. One thing that I like too is just the interface. Whenever you're shooting and you have the face tracking focus on, it puts like a crosshair over the eyes, so you really know that it's locked on there.
I love it, man. That's great. Now, William, you were talking earlier about using the viewfinder in black and white. Okay, now for a shooter such as yourself that's pulling down big events once in a lifetime, or 3 or 4 in a lifetime kinds of wedding situations.
Yes.
Like,
I feel the pressure already. Yeah.
why is that a good strategy to go
It's,
in?
so there's certain shots that I just think work in black and white. And first of all, I have the camera set up that I'm shooting both JPEG and RAW, always. So the beauty of it is by setting it into one of the black and white modes, you can see in black and white. And by the way, there's some killer black and white modes in this camera too, I might add. But for instance, a first dance with beautiful chandeliers in a venue. To me, I always think of like the Rat Pack days and Sinatra. That should be black and white. Put it in black and white mode. You see it in black and white. You know if you're getting the, because you know when you convert sometimes, some color shots don't look great in black and white. But now you know what it's going to look like. Maybe you frame it, compose it differently. But then when you get back to your studio, you still have the raw image. So if you wanted to go to color, you still have that data there to go to color, so you get the best of both worlds.
Oh, that's super, super cool. Do you use the black and white filter or the black and white finder for video? Or?
No, so all of my personal street photography, 99% of which is in black and white, I didn't use it. I shot everything in color. Because I was like, I need to see what the colors look like and what the skin tones look like, because that's a huge thing for us video users, is how does it represent skin tone? So I was like, right, do all color. So I didn't even know that that feature existed.
Buy me a copy.
I have to say, though, going back to kind of the EVF, I've never been a huge fan of EVFs. I still, because, you know, I'm still used to kind of DSLR or like the viewfinder, the optical viewfinder, which I have in my Leica. This EVF is different, and I don't know what you think, Emily, because I think this is the first time you said that you've used like an electronic viewfinder before.
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen one.
It's really good. It's really good. There's, you know, what, 5.7 odd million dots in there. Like, the resolution is fantastic to the point where, as we were sort of discussing before we went live, I can manually focus for video, and I'm seeing the focus peaking, creeping in and out. And for 4K, this is really important, right? Typically, if I'm shooting something for a commercial or a fashion piece, I've got an external monitor or a large LCD. However, the ability to put your eye up to the EVF there and see really clearly what is in and out of focus as you're racking is very, very important. And I think like the EVF has almost converted me to actually being open to using EVF.
Part of it is literally just the adjustment period. Like,
Yeah.
I did, over the course of the past couple weeks using this camera, I would hand it off to, like I said, certain like friends of mine that weren't photographers, but I also did work with some other like photographers that are out there in the field. And I remember handing it to someone and he was like, this is weird, I don't like looking through this. And it's just, I think, an adjustment period. Because he didn't expect it. He didn't know that it was like gonna look that way. And immediately looking through, he's like, this is so strange. There's all these different things and lines and everything happening. Which I guess I didn't really think about at first. And then once I started looking, I was like, oh, actually, this is pretty useful. Once I actually started using it and playing with it, and like I was telling you guys earlier, like I kind of just sat on the couch the first night and I was like, I'm just gonna mess around with this like while I'm watching Netflix and just taking photos around my apartment and just kind of like playing with the different features of the camera. Once you get used to it and it's kind of like over that adjustment, you're like, oh, actually this is really useful. And it's really like nice to be able to do that without having to switch back and forth all the time.
Sweet.
The great thing about the EVF, though, and you brought it up before, is the constant preview. Turning that on, you know that you're probably really close as far as exposure goes. Instead of sometimes you bump something you don't know and you're shooting away, and you're like, oh man, all my images are underexposed. But now if you're looking through the viewfinder or the back of the camera, you know right away.
Well, let's jump in. We're going to take some questions from the Twitters.
Nice.
You all ready? Okay.
All right.
So first up, how does the workflow of the S1 differ from that of the GH5? Are they compatible or separate beasts altogether? And Dave, you want to jump into that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not too qualified to answer because I've only shot maybe 2 jobs with the GH5. So I'm not super familiar. I mean, honestly, in terms of the workflow, I don't know what aspect of the workflow, but from the limited experience I've had on the GH5 and GH5S line compared to this, I didn't notice anything different. I mean, I'm often shooting raw video, right? So I'm at one end of a spectrum. This is, to me, at the other end. But there's no real big noticeable differences from what I saw on the piece which I cut with the GH5S and this. Maybe, Sean, you can tell me if there's anything different, but it seemed pretty seamless.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the beauties of being the company that Panasonic is that, you know, the interaction of how you work with the 5 series and then this, they're not supposed to be different. You know, sure, if you're shooting 10-bit all-intra on a GH5, there's no all-intra here, so that's a little bit of a difference there, but workflow-wise, you know, getting this footage into your editor or anything like that, there's not going to be anything different. It shoots MP4, so you're able to just drop that in, or if you're on the S1 and you're shooting hybrid log, it shoots in HEVC, so that might be a little different for some if you don't have a system that can support H.265 footage.
Yeah.
That can be a little tough, but.
Okay. All right, so next up here. How does the low ISO performance of the Lumix S1R compare to current DSLRs, like Nikon's D850 or the Canon 5D Mark IV? Emily, like you've shot Canon.
I've shot Canon, yeah, for the most part.
In the ISO, in the lower ISO realm, are they looking similar to you, different?
I didn't shoot a whole lot of low light situations. I tend to go for really bright sunny aesthetics, so that's
You're shooting-
more of what I was shooting. But I did find that like even at dusk, so one of the photos that I took that I actually don't think I even included in this little slideshow, one of the photos was very, very dark. It wound up being a backlit photo of me against a bright sky, and I wanted to expose for the sky because I wanted that to be still beautiful and blue and crisp. So I stopped it down a lot. And I was still able to go in afterwards and edit myself back up, which was nice. So I was still able to get my own image and the actual color of the sky. There was a lot of editing that took place after the fact, but it was nice to be able to have that ability to do that because I have found in the past with certain very contrasty images in my Canon camera, which, you know, I've used Canon most of my photo experience life. I have found a few issues where like you can't get the same quality from a really, really dark shadow of an image or something like that. So it was nice to be able to do something super contrasty. But yeah, I think you were talking about shooting a little bit more low light when you were in Colombia.
Yeah, so before Lumix years ago, I did shoot another brand, so I do have a little bit of experience with that. And I have the Micro Four Thirds, and this thing actually blows me away. I know Sean and I were maybe having, we were out one night, and we were in a dark lit place, and he was shooting, and it absolutely blew me away what he could get on this camera.
Oh yeah, down in Texas when we were shooting down there in
Yeah.
that mezcal place.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And then I've played with it, and a 6400, you just zoom in on the back of the camera, and there's no noise. It's like just weird. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I pushed the video to 12,800.
You felt
and it was
pretty good
clean.
there. You were
No noise
Yeah,
reduction
clean.
in post. I was like, what? How? And also, I shot video and then I moved straight into stills, and I had a friend that I was out with just stay in the corner of the frame so I could get some long exposure, like 1.3 second handheld exposure, right? At 12,800, I think it was. Some people walking past with umbrellas, some car lights trailing. This is in the East Village, right?
Yeah.
1.3 seconds handheld at 12,800, I think it was. Just, and holding it for 1.3 seconds. And I'm like, zooming in, there's no motion blur.
Oh, that's cool.
That is weird.
That's very weird.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Going back to that stabilization. I keep going back to the stabilization.
We're in a good way.
All right, now, here's our next question. Panasonic has always had a great video reputation with its Micro Four Thirds cameras. What is there about the S1 series cameras that will make me want to switch to Panasonic's full frame version? I'm curious about this because I don't know necessarily if this is, I don't really think you should think of these cameras as a replacement for Micro Four Thirds. Like,
Exactly. You know, really in that case, you know, specifically for this scenario, it's more, you know, like I said, not switching to this. It's more to William's point. It's that it's a tool. If you're out there, you know, and you have the GH cameras and you're you know, making money, you're enjoying the quality you're getting out of it, but you know, you may be missing that shallow depth of field effect, or you know, you really do need to shoot in, you know, pitch black, then this is something that you add to it. I think people tend to look at new cameras as up replacements. You know, the second this comes out, the equipment I have is now, you know, useless. So no, the world that we live in is very easy to look at this and say, this sits with the rest of my equipment, and this will only add to my creative capabilities. So
I like that a lot. So it's a new category. It's just, in a lot of ways, I think they're kind of like sidecar
Yeah.
to one another. Like
It's
they can
the
buddy
same.
up.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
Which is great. All right, next question here. Maybe we'll start with William, kind of work our way around here. What are you most excited about in regards to the Lumix S1 series? What's the thing that excites you the most about the camera?
we just been talking about it. Low light. It is absolutely amazing, and it's going to make my life so easy for certain shots. I'm still going to use the Micro Four Thirds for a lot of stuff, but like we keep coming back. It's an awesome tool. So that's one exciting feature. And I just got to bring up one other small feature that I sort of just discovered a little while ago. It's called IS Scope. And,
yeah.
and it's so cool. It's this little thing, you can turn it on the back of the camera, and it gives 2 red concentric circles and this little green dot in the middle. And even with image stabilization turned on, as you hold the camera, that green dot starts moving around. And if it's out of the smaller circle, you're only getting a certain percentage of image stabilization. If it's out of both circles, you've lost it all. Now, I'm probably the oldest guy sitting here by a long shot on this panel, and I used to think I shake, and it is a great training tool just to like, okay, now I got to breathe and just think how I'm shooting, and it's actually training me to be a better photographer.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that a lot, but there are, and I have mine, I'm sure you have yours, there's small exercises that photographers do that make them better. And it's those tiny little
Yes.
things that make all the difference. The tiny little things like get you from good to great, because that's a very small distance between
Yes.
good and great. All right, what are you most excited about, Emily?
One of the things that I was most excited about was the absolutely stellar quality of the images that I was getting. Everything was so crisp and clear, and if I needed to zoom in on something, I could, and if I needed to get in there and really like work with some of the color and stuff, I could. And another thing that I was really impressed by was just the general like ease of use with some of the features. Once I got used to it, and once I got over that learning curve, I found it very quick to kind of like switch between what I needed to do. So I'm excited for this entire experience to come out, for everyone else to try it.
That's awesome. Mine's super simple. I like the size of the camera body. I think it's awesome to see.
It's balanced.
Yeah, it's really, really cool to see a mirrorless camera not small for the sake of small. It's like, here I am a camera, I do this thing, and it feels great, and the features that are under the hood, they require the size, so I'm glad it's there. It doesn't look like there's a compromise made on that. All right, Dave, for you, what's the most exciting?
I mean, I've banged on about the body image stabilization a lot, but honestly, the most exciting thing about this, after having used it for a week or so, is the fact that it represents a very good, this does really good stills and video. This is the S1 specifically, not the S1R, which I didn't use. And for a camera at that price point to have the functionality, the usability for me as a professional to flip between stills and video and have everything and a very usable interface like menu system, which I know a lot of people can complain about sometimes with certain manufacturers. That checked a lot of boxes. That's probably the most exciting thing. At the end of the week, I was like, man, I almost don't want to give this back. You know? Almost. Yeah, well, I mean, there's a few niggles. There's a few things. There's a few small things. But I was really impressed. And I think the overall most exciting thing was that it represented this kind of where the industry's been going, which is the convergence that's been going on for a while now, in a really good, neat, tidy, very usable package. That you don't see very often, right? There's always a compromise somewhere. And if it's the fact that if I flip out the articulated screen and can't fully see the top, like if that's my biggest gripe with it, then I'm happy, you know? As a professional, that's a great tool.
Can I add one more?
Yeah, please.
And we already talked about it, and to me, it's the Lens Alliance. I am totally stoked about that. You've talked about being a Leica shooter. So with Leica and Sigma announcing all these lenses coming out this year, I mean, I am totally stoked with that. I think it's an amazing thing.
It's really stellar for such a new camera that's just on the market. Like,
Yeah, right?
Yeah, you'll be scaling up pretty quickly with 3 big brands.
Yeah, and that's the part that I think once Sigma's products hit the market, you know, with the adapters, and then you know we have some of the selection of the L series lenses. It's gonna be such a monumental change for the industry because, like you said before, no one's really done this before. The Micro Four Thirds collective that we had, that was one type of thing. That was the mount, things like that. This is very different. This is a lot more involved in the way the Alliance works so that you don't lose something by going, you know, if there's a lens that Sigma offers that we don't make, it's there and you're not giving anything up for it. So it's that no compromise concept that we want to provide a tool to make your visions be the way you want them to be and just get out of the way of your creativity. That's the goal.
Super cool, super cool. All right, one more question here from Twitter that I want to get to. I started with the G7, then upgraded to the G9. I mostly enjoy wildlife and sports. What's the benefit of me upgrading to the S series? Okay, so for somebody shooting fast action, what are the benefits here going sports and wildlife? I think a lot of these things we've kind of touched on, we just haven't put in that context. Having the larger sensor and the larger ISO sensitivity, I think, helps you if you're getting up early to shoot wildlife, or you're shooting sport on the track, or in a lower light type of situation. What are some of the other benefits that you all would think of for
I
sports?
mentioned it earlier, but I was very impressed by how quick everything was. Everything, once I had figured out what I wanted to shoot and I was ready to go and I had the settings down, it was really quick. The second I pushed the shutter, it was just like, bam, you have 20 images immediately. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, I didn't mean to take that, and you have all these bloopers. But in terms of sports and wildlife and things like that, that you want it to capture every single second of motion and what's going on, absolutely incredible. Just really, really quick.
Yeah, and I think with sports and wildlife, anything, I mean, I don't know what that person is shooting wildlife-wise or sports-wise for that matter, but obviously you want something that can track the action quickly, whether that's a bird flying or, I don't know, a turtle blinking its eyes or whatever wildlife photographers shoot. No disrespect to wildlife photographers, but you want something that can respond quickly, and I think the autofocus, the tracking ability, and even the single point, I use the single point autofocus going back to what we were talking about with the 50, moving it quickly between subjects in the fore, mid, and background, it locks on quickly. The backlit thing aside, right, which was a difficult subject to acquire for any camera, it's heavily backlit. I was very impressed how quickly you can get that autofocus point to lock onto what you want.
The biggest difference between, because I shoot the G9 too, the biggest difference is this: it does have animal detection, where the G9 doesn't at the moment. And one of the animals it will detect is, allegedly, is birds. Like you, I don't shoot a lot of birds, but I think if you're out there doing wildlife and shooting birds, this camera will actually recognize that's a bird and lock onto it. Am I correct with that, Sean?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this I think also goes to that other little point that I was mentioning before, is that, just because the S series is out doesn't necessarily mean that it might not be the best might not be the best product for what you're trying to shoot. The S1 and S1R, they're not they're capable wildlife and sports cameras. I honestly think there's no issue there. But the G9 is also equally an amazing camera still, and we continue to develop new lenses for the Micro Four Thirds that can also add benefit there. So, a compelling reason to update to this might be that, you have the animal detection, the faster focusing system, but there is also an equally compelling reason to maybe expand your Micro Four Thirds system, because if you're already happy with the image quality, get that next lens, get the 200 millimeter.
Especially
because
if you're traveling too, you have all the weight, and if you go to Africa, there's weight restrictions, what you can bring.
Yeah, and our commitment to the industry is that we offer this huge breadth of system now, where if you want full frame, if that's really what you desire as your upgrade, then we have it. Welcome, this is awesome. But if you're happy with the G9, you like the feel, the weight, size, everything like that, get that next lens. Step up to the next quality that you can offer for what you have, and grow that way.
I think this ends up actually being a really good transition camera for professional photographers considering a different system to a mirrorless camera, because you kind of get that crossover, or you definitely get that crossover, I should say, that it's still got all of the capabilities that you're trying to get, but you're not losing anything by going down to mirrorless. I think that was also my hesitation when I've looked into mirrorless systems in the past, is you're generally losing something along the way. You're not able to have the exact same functionality that you might get with the bigger full frame camera. So it's nice that you're able to have both on this. It's just kind of one of those cameras, I feel that does it all, which is to your point, that there might be something that's better for something more specific, but if you just want that wide breadth for everything, that you're shooting a variety of things as you're going, it is a nice option.
Are you ready to give away a $500 B&H gift card, folks?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right, okay. Drum roll, please. Winner of the $500 gift card for B&H is DJ Peacock 68. Congratulations, DJ Peacock 68. That is $500 to you. Awesome. So cool. You can't.
Peacock 68.
Just wanted to give a quick shout out. Hey, Frank, how'd it go over there?
It went well. It's going well, still, as we speak.
What's the thing you like most about the S1?
The S1, I mean, it's a combination of everything. There's no one thing. I mean, it's just hitting it right in the right places. The EVF is easily the best EVF I've ever used. The responsiveness, the controls, I mean, it's a real camera that you can put your whole hand on. and it just feels rugged.
That's awesome, man. Well, we have a very, very short amount of time here left. I wanted to thank our panelists, and as we're on our way out, maybe each one of us could give a very quick a tip to keep folks motivated and out there shooting. It's wonderful to have the gear, but it's a much more profound thing to be able to make images. So, Dave, anything you'd want to say to photographers at home?
We all have our down days. We all have those days where we look at our work and we think, oh my God, why am I doing this as a hobbyist or a professional? Like, I suck. We look at social media. We're like, oh my God, everyone's so much better than me. I suck, blah, blah, blah. Just power through it. Just accept that, right? Because we all have that. The main thing is find the tool that's right for you, that allows you to express yourself. For me, I was very surprised. This allowed me to do that really nicely. So I think if you want some motivation, just power through those bad days.
Emily?
I would say adventure is out there, which is so cheesy, but just go out and find an adventure. The reason that most of us, and I think everyone got into photography, is to go out and see the world and explore and create beautiful imagery as they're doing that. So just look for your adventure.
Love it, William.
Personal projects. We sort of get locked in as professionals in a box of what we're shooting all the time. I know it sounds corny, but get out of your comfort zone and maybe shoot something that you normally wouldn't. And you get that feeling of being wonder like a kid again. And I think that's important.
Well, special thanks to all of our guests today. Thank you for watching the BHPhoto live stream, looking at the Panasonic S1 and S1R. I'm photographer David Flores. We'll see you next time.